Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News, focusing on the loss of Air India Flight 171. I'm Geoffrey Thomas, and I'm delighted to say, once again, joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Frankfurt. Good afternoon to you, Richard.
And good evening to you, Geoffrey.
Lovely evening here. Now, viewers, this episode is called Why? Episode 247. We've been overwhelmed by the response to yesterday's episode on the cause of the Air India 171 crash. Over 500 comments and 77 viewers asking the question, why? Many opinions and strong debates. Let us start with a summary. Jim Ballantyne 4408. In summary, poor maintenance results in a set of circumstances never envisaged by the designers of the aircraft. Result, disaster. And Malvern London 8683. Very good, thank you. Any chance of recording a 5-minute summary of this, which would be a go-to clip for those lay viewers like me who struggle with the lengthier explanations and more technical aspects? Keep up the good work. You have made an outstanding contribution over the past few months. Have a nice day. So here is the 5-minute summary. Air India 171 crashed on the 12th of June 2025, just after takeoff from Ahmedabad Airport in India. The first fatal crash of a Boeing 787 after almost 16 years of operation. Up until then, over 1 billion passengers had flown on the 787 without a single fatality. Richard, can you carry on?
The engines were both shut down 3 seconds after takeoff. Both engines were successfully restarted, but too late to save the aircraft. The flight only lasted 32 seconds, and it can take more than 60 seconds for engines to relight and reach full thrust. The engines were not damaged. The fuel to the engines was fine. The engines automatically shut down to idle as a fail-safe when a fault occurs in the link between the aircraft's computer and the engines. Simply put, the engines no longer know what setting the pilot wants. We believe this was caused by water seeping into the equipment and resulting in a short circuit in the DC electrical system. And because of that, the RAT deployed automatically, and it is designed as an emergency backup to the electrical system. The pilots had too little time to save the aircraft. The pilots can initiate a manual restart of the engines by toggling the fuel switches in the cockpit. Toggling the fuel switches normally has two effects. One is a direct command to close the SPA fuel valve, and the other via the data link to close the engine flow metering valve. With both DC buses failed, neither the direct signal path nor the data link signal path would work. So toggling the fuel switches would have no effect. Once emergency power is restored to the aircraft and the engine controls are linked to the cockpit again, then the engines can be restarted. The fuel switches must be back in the run position to relight the engines, which they both were. Our investigation shows problems with many Air India aircraft, resulting in delays, cancellations, and diversions. There were many passenger complaints. Whistleblowers have revealed maintenance failures by the airline. The authorities have already issued several notices to Air India and fined them for safety violations. We are saying the authorities should adopt a new policy, forcing a Boeing redesign and change to prevent this kind of accident happening again, even when the aircraft is not properly maintained. And all airlines should be enforced to adhere to all maintenance regulations, and operators that fail to comply should be banned from international travel.
So that is the end of the 5 minute summary. And before we get on to the 77 questions of why, just a word. Please subscribe to us. Please like us. Please keep those great comments and fantastic questions coming. We really do appreciate them. And don't worry, viewers, we're not going to read out all 77 questions. We're going to be doing a bit of a summary. Starting off with Smooth's View 6103. How likely is it that both engines flamed out from idle at the same time? Number two, why did the FDR indicate a cut-off rather than idle, then flame out? If one pilot cycled the run switches to relight the engines, why did they then deny they had cut off when asked by the other pilot? If the pilot put the switches to cut off to relight the engines, why did they take so long to move them back to run? Finally, it is normal procedure for any pilot to notify the other of doing anything with the run cut-off switches. This does not seem to have happened. And Marielle 129, why would the FO say, why did you cut off? Obviously, he saw him pull and turn the switches. If the engines just cut off, he certainly wouldn't ask the veteran captain that question. He clearly saw him. Richard.
Well, the key to understanding all of that and answering your questions is the sequence of events. First was the electrical failure, and that caused the rat to deploy and the engines to be set to idle. Second was the fuel switches. They were cycled in sync with the rat deployment, and that caused the engines to shut down and the relight sequence to start. The conversation about cutoff refers to the flight first officer's displays and instruments being cut off when the electrical failure occurred. And when the rat comes online electrically, the displays and instruments will be restored.
Jeff Daniel 814. Excellent analysis. Kudos to all involved. A few points. The pilots are clearly not suicidal and are not at fault. They did their best to try and save the aircraft. Boeing is also not out of the woods either. There is a clear design change required. The authorities have work to do. The FAA to see to it that the proposed changes are evaluated and implemented. The Indian authorities should take immediate action against AI and ground the entire fleet pending a full review of all aircraft maintenance compliance. And finally, for number four, all operators of the 787 should take this investigation very seriously and check every single one of their 787s. And Guy UK agreed. Those besmirching the pilots need to hang their heads in shame, heroes, not villains. And Joe Isley, 4578, this unfortunate accident has little to do with Boeing. Every aircraft manufacturer globally issues service bulletins and airworthiness directives to address design flaws, premature wear issues, and similar concerns. If Air India failed to implement AD 2016-1404, 2024 NPRM, in addition to service bulletins, SB 38009 and SB 530031, the responsibility would rest entirely with Air India. It appears that these service bulletins may not have been addressed. Richard.
Well, yeah. In my view, the pilots were trying to save the plane, and the root cause of the crash was poor maintenance. Even so, any aircraft with an automatic DC bus tie is vulnerable when there is poor maintenance. And in my view, the FAA should consider whether the current regulation is adequate.
So this was a comment by ourselves. The Boeing 787 worked as designed for 1 billion passengers and 30-minute flight hours. Air India VT-ANB worked as designed for 48,000 flight hours. Ian Gill then responded, accepted. Why did Richard recommend changes? It seemed to me that he identified an unusual glitch in your video. Then Alan Playford replied to Ian Gill, I think that the most obvious change needed here is for Boeing to replace some of the components to minimise such shorts and to change their system to allow more time, 30 seconds as suggested, in maintaining current engine thrust settings when the TRA becomes incommunicado with the EEC FADEC. This is possible because of the memory retention within the system's components. The FAA must also re-evaluate their alerts and requirements criteria to ensure that most receive higher priority unless they cannot be obviously critical in any way. And of course, Air India should be taken into account for falsifying compliance with maintenance records. This could cost them dearly. Finally, Curious Crow, MP4CX, in reply to Ian Gill, because it makes sense to do so, even though it might be a rare incidence, it is a relatively easy fix to prevent a low-grade transient intermittent fault initiating an unnecessary or dangerous dual engine shutdown. Quite a debate, Richard.
Yeah, and fully follow it and agree with it.
Mm.
The first step is to reproduce the problem, and we've suggested how that can take place. And the second step is to analyze the risk of such an event ever happening again. And if that risk is a serious concern, the third step is to define the necessary changes in the regulations and in the design. So let's get on with the job.
So, Nissim Hadar, in reply to all the above comments, you are all wrong. The fuel masters were shut off while the engines were operating normally. This video is bullshit. Yater Spoon, 57, in reply to Nissan, somebody has the full CVR transcripts. That somebody isn't named Geoffrey or Richard. Things that make you go, Nissim Hadar, in reply to Yater, the PF asked the PM, why did you cut off? That is all you need to know. This exactly matches what the CSFDR data shows. Richard.
Oh, surprise, surprise. I disagree.
So do I.
I, I do not think the video yesterday was bullshit. I do agree that we only have the small amount of FDR data from the preliminary report, and we have the one misleading snippet from the CVR transcript on cutoff. But we also have the ATC transcript, the airport ground radar timings, the airport security CCTV footage, the ADS-B data, the Boeing and GE manuals, and input from Boeing 787 pilots and engineers and Air India maintenance personnel. And that body of evidence is sufficient to write the report we published yesterday. And I have to ask, what is your motive in calling the video bullshit and claiming the statement in the preliminary report is all you need to know?
Yes. And we should also add, Richard, that, and we've discussed many times, that most of the aviation experts out there say the preliminary report is full of flaws as well.
Yep.
So, Carl Flight, this video has the potential to be the most significant video of the whole of 2025. It should be spread far and wide and its findings listened to. Well, I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, I agree with that one. But Carl, obviously there are some people who don't want the video spread far and wide. What I would like to see is that our paper enjoys a widespread scrutiny. And the viewers on this channel are certainly asking a lot of questions and more than we could address today. So we'll be continuing to cover the questions in the coming days until we get through all of the key ones.
The Way Things Are, 8158, with Richard Godfrey's meticulous and outstanding examination of the available data, it looks very much as if this appalling episode of carnage and suffering was entirely preventable. Shame on Air India for attempting to obfuscate the records and for attempting to blame the pilots. Richard, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, well, actually, it was India obfuscating the records on maintenance, but it was the AAIB who were attempting to blame the pilots and visiting the captain's father, which is out of protocol. But I fully agree with you. The accident was preventable, and the key is making sure this never happens again. I think 16 years without a fatal accident shows that what happened is not a regular occurrence. It's an extreme black swan event or white swan event, depending where you live. And what we need to know exactly now is what has to be done to make sure this occurrence is never repeated. And I have to say, unfortunately, at the moment, this accident could be repeated.
Disblair, well then, please inform the official investigators that they are wasting their time and that you have discovered the reason for the crash, despite having access to very little information from the flight. You guys take the biscuit with Richard's non-stop spouting of data and Geoffrey's platitudes. Your continued speculation as to the cause of the crash, however well intended, is disrespectful to the families of the deceased. Please end this speculation and focus on some real airline news. At the end of the day, your views are speculation, however you wish to dress it up. I don't agree with that, Richard.
No, and yeah, display, you can call it what you like, but I can tell you we will not stop.
No. And I think this gentleman or this person should recognise the fact that so many crash investigations are flawed, and a number have been actually solved by lay members of the public over the years. And we've covered a few of those, haven't we, Richard?
Yeah, we've been through them, and there's more we could go through too.
Yeah, certainly are. So, RAHINC, in a way, it's nice to get past the over the top praise, often misspelled, filling the comments section. On the other hand, I consider Richard's work to be a theory on this accident's cause that has been prepared with great care, knowledge, and in consultation with aviation professionals. I admire these two for the work because it cannot harm the official investigation, but only improve it by encouraging pressure to be brought where it is needed to help achieve accountability in the long run. And doing a disservice to the victim's family, not likely.
Well said, Rahim. Thank you for that. We have actually had private emails from some family members, and they have read the report we published yesterday and thanked us for it. And by the way, they are also asking why, just like many of our viewers are.
Mm. Well, thank you, Richard, for answering these testing questions, probing questions, which are all good.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Yeah. So, viewers, we're going to be back tomorrow with another edition of Daily Airline News focusing on Air India 171 and addressing more of your questions. Please subscribe to us. Please like us. Please keep those wonderful comments coming. And please keep those great questions coming. We do appreciate them very much indeed, even if we don't necessarily like them. They do challenge us, and we're up for the challenge. So please do tune in tomorrow, and we look forward very much to your company. Thank you.